You can poop every single day and still be constipated. You can poop a good size poop every single day and still be constipated. So that doesn't necessarily mean, that your gut health is, on target necessarily. And it should look like somewhere between a smooth hot dog and soft serve ice cream is what you want. I think for kids, the biggest thing to consider too is, if you're really struggling to go, if it's little pellets all day long, they're pooping several times a day, it should be easy to poop. It shouldn't be a strain. It should come out smooth and easy. Those are some things maybe to look for more. And sometimes I hear parents say, like, it's impossible that they're constipated. Every time they poop, it's like huge. But that's actually can be one of the signals that there's constipation if a lot is coming out. So sorry, not to get too graphic, but
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and this is All Things Sensory by Harkla.
We are both certified occupational therapy assistants, and together with Harkla, we are on a mission to empower parents, therapists, and educators to help raise confident and strong children of all abilities.
On this podcast, we chat about all things sensory, diving into special needs, occupational therapy, parenting, self-care, overall health and wellness, and so much more.
We are here to provide raw, honest, and fun strategies, ideas, and information for parents, therapists, and educators, as well as other professionals to implement into daily life.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey there, welcome back to All Things Sensory by Harkla. We're so happy to have you here today for another amazing interview. Unique, amazing, wonderful. I'm Rachel.
I'm Jessica, and we are chatting with Sarah today. She is an occupational therapist, and she specializes in interoception and pelvic floor therapy. She has a private practice. She even told us she's getting ready to go into the schools again part-time. She is the author and illustrator of a book series that Rachel loves, and she's going to share with us some information today on interoception, pelvic floor, give us some tips and tricks and strategies for parents and therapists.
We hope you enjoy it, so let's jump in and meet Sarah. Hello, Sarah. Welcome to the podcast.
hi, thank you so much for having me. I have been following you guys for a while, so I'm excited to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Likewise, actually.
All right. Well, we start all of our interviews with secret questions, which you were just telling us off air that you were ready for them. So we'll jump right in.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. If you could instantly master one hobby or skill, what would it be?
I think playing piano. That just seems like such a cool thing to be able to do.
Yes.
Yeah, and I have no skills there.
No musical talents, to say.
But I, long to just be able to like sit down at a party and like,
Same.
yeah.
I love that.
Well, same, but you know how to play piano.
Barely.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's more than me. I just yeah. I think I can do, Heart and Soul.
Of course, the classic. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's a good party trick.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to...
Okay, next question. What is your favorite smell from childhood that still makes you smile?
I feel like this is so cliche, but I love the smell of library and like books.
Cliche? That's a good
Really?
one.
Oh, it's good. And I've been going to my public library more now, and it's just like every time you walk in, it feels so comforting and good. For me, it feels comforting and good.
I'm right there with you. I'm going to the library after work today.
Oh, me too.
Enjoy the smell.
I will now.
Bottle it up.
It's so calming. Yeah, I love that smell.
Agreed.
So good.
If you get one uninterrupted hour to yourself, what are you doing?
Oh, I mean, really, what am I doing? Is probably scrolling Instagram.
I like the honesty.
I know.
Yeah.
So good.
My highest self answer would be maybe meditating or reading a book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Outside, of course.
Yeah. Yes.
I love that.
Forest bathing.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I should be doing.
Forest bathing. That's good. Okay. What are you currently reading then or listening to?
I'm currently reading a book called The Heroine's Journey, which is I forgot the other, but she takes Joseph Campbell's hero's story, and she kind of like writes it from the woman's perspective and like how it's different. So that's been cool. And I'm currently listening to The Good Hang with Amy Poehler, her new podcast. That's been fun and nice to listen to.
Okay. Love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last question, our favorite. What is your sensory quirk?
I was thinking you might ask this one because, yeah, I think everyone has, but I think I'm more of a sensory seeker. So I think my quirk might be just like, I love touching like sticky stuff like slime. And when I see things like fidgets, like I have some in my office, but like I can't help myself. I'm just like, let me see what it touches. And like when I go shopping, I'm the person that just like touches everything.
I love that.
So I'm a tactile seeker for sure.
Yeah. I don't know if we've had anyone say that on the show yet.
No, I think that's the first.
I think most people think like defensiveness, but I was thinking about that. I'm like, I'm really not, like, I'm the opposite.
Sensory seeker. Great.
Okay. So now that everyone knows your deepest, darkest secrets, truly, your sensory seeking tendencies, what you're doing in your free time, tell us who you are, what you do, why you do it, all the beautiful things.
All right. Well, I'm Sarah Selznick, and I'm an occupational therapist. And let's see, I graduated in about 2009, and I've always wanted to work in pediatrics. So my first job was like working with peds and adults with developmental disabilities. And then I worked at a school in New York City for children on the autism spectrum. And it was, I see now at the time, very progressive in terms of very affirming and neurodiversity affirming. Before that was kind of like a commonplace word. So that was a great foundation for me. And then I moved to Virginia and worked in early intervention and outpatient pediatrics. And then I had a baby, and then COVID hit. And after having my baby was the first time I realized I had a pelvic floor and what it was, and that OTs work in that area. And I was just amazed. And then I found, that there were OTs working in pediatric pelvic floor, and like it just was, light bulbs went off. I was like, this feels like such a good fit for me. And then of course, I don't know if this happens with you guys, but like, you go through your whole caseload that you've ever seen since like day one, and you're just like through this new lens of pelvic floor care. And I was just like, oh, like this makes so much sense in terms of regulation and life skill, like acquiring life skills. And it was very rare that I have these kind of moments in life, but it just felt like everything clicked. And I was just like, this is something that feels so right to me. And I just couldn't get enough. So I just was studying. And the more I kind of went into it, the more it just fit with my mindset and my kind of background in sensory integration and interoception, and focus on like functional life skills. And it was just fascinating. And the more I kind of dove in, the more I realized what a huge problem this was for so many families, and how it was really underserved. And not only that, but an area that people didn't feel comfortable talking about. It's embarrassing. There's a lot of shame around it. So that just kind of drew me in even more to want to work to address this, both in a private practice, but then also on Instagram, kind of talking about it, sometimes humorously talking about it, to try to bring to light this really like dark, shadowy part that people don't want to discuss. So I opened my private practice and with focus on this, and started an online course, which is like part education, part support group, part kind of curriculum guiding parents through their tricky issues, specifically with pooping, and not the parents, but their children.
Sometimes, you never know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that does happen to a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm also constipated. And yeah, and so that's kind of where I landed here with my private practice. And then I just continue to love working in pediatrics and school-based and kind of the whole spectrum of infancy to childhood. So that's a little about me and how I'm here.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think it is definitely something that's not talked about as much. And oh man, we interviewed Kiara, and she's down in California on pelvic floor. And I remember after talking to her about it, I just thought about so many clients that I was like, oh, I need to refer them out to a pelvic floor specialist to help with this. And unfortunately, we don't have any great options here.
Which is nice to have the course available too. So that way parents can kind of learn the ins and the outs from a professional and kind of do as much as they can at home as well.
Yeah, and Kira's amazing. She's a real leader, like of OTs in pediatric pelvic health, and like so inspiring. But there is a lot I think parents can do, and I think part of it's like a multi-dimensional problem. But part of the problem is there's just not a lot of information out there. It's kind of like you potty train your kid, and then we don't talk about this again until like maybe puberty. Then we'll talk about like hygiene. So there's just not a ton of support for parents. That's kind of the number one thing I hear is that if your kid is having trouble going to the bathroom after potty training age, you know, who do you turn to? Where do you go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's start talking about it and answer some questions. I think the biggest question is like, why do some children hold their bowel movements, especially our kids with sensory processing disorder, our autistic kids, seems to be those kids that we find holding often.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And like a lot of things with kids, it's so layered. And I think a lot about the the learning pyramid model where at the top it's the I love that too. And I think about it as like the potty iceberg. And so it's like at the top there's what you can see. Your kid's either going in the bathroom or not, but underneath that there's so many factors that play into it. And I think the biggest factors that I see impacting kids are nervous system regulation. Are they feeling safe in their body and their environment? Can they regulate enough to identify their body cues, but also can they regulate enough to sit on a toilet and relax their muscles? And then there's, motor coordination issues at a certain point, and then it becomes kind of a chicken and an egg situation. At a certain point, if you're used to tightening your pelvic floor muscles, when you feel the urge to go to the bathroom, you can get muscle discoordination. So if you're kind of automatically or subconsciously tightening your muscles every time you have the urge to go, it can be really hard to relax, which leads to constipation, which again, a chicken and an egg situation. So holding can cause constipation. Constipation can cause holding. So we're primed to avoid discomfort and pain. And if there's been even one, painful pooping incidents or bout of constipation, or scary toileting episode, that can kind of start the cycle of holding, or ignoring our cue to go to the bathroom because we're just so scared to like enter that state or room. So it's often never one thing. There are like genetic things or gut motility things that I think can have a lot to do with genetics, but most of the time there's a bout of constipation that went either unnoticed for a while or was like really severe. And then it just kind of leads to a subconscious reaction of holding and avoiding. So that's kind of what I see a lot in my practice.
I love that you brought up nervous system regulation because that's literally no one's first thought when we're going to the bathroom, right? Like, are we regulated? Is our nervous system primed to be able to relax and go to the bathroom? And I just feel like that's something that I have honestly never had that conversation come up before when talking about potty training.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we think of it as behavioral, a choice that we make. But, with so many things, if our body, if we're subconsciously reacting to something, you know, we're just wired to stay safe. And that can feel like such an unsafe situation for so many kids. And then by the time it's kind of like brought to consciousness, then we have the motor part of it that needs to be kind of resolved and the constipation part that needs to be resolved.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to withholding, because that's kind of our topic today, is our focus today is a child who is holding their bowel movement specifically. What are some common signs that you see when a child is holding a bowel movement?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's like the classic holding moves that you can see, like squeezing, just like looking uncomfortable. But other kind of maybe less noticeable things that I see commonly in my practice are what look like huge behavioral problems. So like getting really angry or, like pushing things away or a person away. So it can look really aggressive, but it can be kind of a hold move. A lot of times kids might roll on the floor or cry, just have huge, what look like behavioral reactions because it's their body just fighting so hard to not let their poop out. There's certainly like physical maneuvers that you'll see, just like getting into different positions or kind of pacing around at times that might look like it's not appropriate to pace around. So things like that. And then other things might be like when your child does have a bowel movement, it looks really big or it's really hard or there's constipation. I think most of the time when we see constipation, there's typically, like holding can come up often with that.
Yeah. Do you ever see toe walking?
Sure. Anything that would tense the muscles of your pelvic floor, toe walking, clenching, like raised shoulders, maybe leaning backwards against things, anything that would tighten the abdomen or the pelvic floor. Yeah.
So then what role does pelvic floor play in this constipation and holding?
Yeah, from just a purely pelvic floor, like the muscle aspect, it's learning to coordinate the muscles of the pelvic floor, of the diaphragm with your breathing, and of your abdomen to coordinate all those muscles with the urge to go so that you're truly relaxing your pelvic floor muscles, opening up and letting out anything that needs to come out while coordinating your diaphragm and your breathing to aid in the pushing out. So it's from that perspective, it becomes a coordination issue. Mm-hmm. And then, the sensory aspect can be more complex at that point of identifying sensory triggers for the bathroom and how those might be contributing to the inability to coordinate or the inability to relax those muscles.
Now, I think this might be a question that parents will have. I mean, as a parent, I would question this as well. Like, isn't that something that a child should learn naturally as they're like moving and playing throughout toddlerhood and we're potty training? Shouldn't that just like come quote unquote naturally to them?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that would be great. I think what happens is it's really hard to reinforce the natural state of kind of going to the bathroom when kids reach school aged or potty training age because there's a lot more demands put on us. And that's about the same time where we see kind of less focus on our bodies and more focus on like higher level cognitive tasks. So I think a couple of things happen and I think this is probably so many kids, not just the kids that come to need pelvic floor therapy, but we're out of touch with our bodies. We don't know when it's time to go. And then things might happen where we become self-conscious and uncomfortable going to the bathroom, let's say at school. So we hold, and then it becomes a cycle of holding until we're in a safe place. Mm-hmm. So a lot of kids, can do that naturally and can go anywhere at any time. And then some kids who are maybe a bit more sensitive or who require a bit more effort when they do go to the bathroom, it can have really adverse side effects. And it's no one's fault, but it's just like, it can become especially for like a highly sensitive or a sensory sensitive child, it can become much more complicated more quickly.
And then I'm sure the answer is yes, but does nutrition and hydration play a role in all of this?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, nutrition and hydration and movement in terms of like physical body movement, but also gut motility play a huge role because you can become constipated. And if you become constipated, you're more likely to hold And if you become constipated, you're more likely to have an adverse bathroom experience because it's going to be uncomfortable. So sure, it kind of all fits into this kind of cycle of constipation and pain.
Well, and I just finished a course on the gut microbiome, a CEU course. And I feel like this would be a whole nother topic to talk about of like how your gut microbiome and antibiotics and food and water and, like you said, movement, lifestyle, all of that is going to play a role here.
Oh gosh, yeah, and I wish I knew more about that topic specifically because it certainly plays a huge role. Like if you can have pain-free poops because your microbiome is working properly and things are moving along, it'd be easier, to retrain any sort of muscle issues. But I agree that plays a huge role, and it's hard to get even like the required, just the general requirements for fiber or water can be such a challenge for so many kids.
Oh, yeah. For adults.
For adults, yeah,
You know?
totally.
Okay, is there anything that parents should not do when it comes to withholding bowel movements or promoting bowel movements?
I think the one thing I would say, well, I have two things. One thing is never assume your child's not constipated because constipation can be so sneaky. And, sometimes we don't want our kids playing with their poop or doing that. But we also don't want to have it's a natural part of being human. So as neutral as we can be when we talk about poop is a good thing. We don't want to, it is gross, but we don't want to be like, it's disgusting. And I think a lot of times it can bring up some sensory quirks about parents too, if smells or, it's a heavy duty job when you're toileting a young child. So maybe don't ignore your own sensory needs when you're working with your child or helping them learn to toilet.
I think that's why my kids specifically love your book, I'm Learning to Poop, on the potty, because it's so real and it teaches them about the process of pooping and normalizes it, and I try really hard to just say, yep, this is what we do, this is why, this is you eat, you poop, you eat, you poop, you digest. And they're so fascinated by that book, specifically my daughter who's 3 and like going through all of that right now. But she's like, let's read this book. Look at this is the stomach, this is the poop, and all the things. And I just think that book specifically is so helpful for kids to really see it and understand it, because it's not as scary when they understand the process, when they can see it from start to finish and recognize like, oh, this is what's happening when I'm pooping. Like it just normalizes it and it doesn't make them feel so scared about it. Because I feel like a lot of it does have to do with kids transitioning from diapers to pooping. It's scary. It feels like their body's falling out of them. Like there's some really big feelings associated with pooping. And I just applaud you for writing that book.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so glad that your daughter likes it, that she reads it. I wrote it specifically for that reason is because I was, I love recommending books to my clients and nothing showed the poop coming out. And it was all, like really cute books, but it was all kind of just like a mystery. So I would draw these pictures for my clients to be like, this is what it looks like. And that's like where the idea first came from. So I'm so glad your kids enjoy specifically that part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you mentioned like the parents' reaction to it, it made me think of, when we talk about picky eaters and we recommend to parents, like, don't make a big reaction or don't have a big reaction to these behaviors that your child has around food. We want to just stay kind of neutral so that they don't feed off of our big reaction. And I feel like that's the same thing here, is like if your child is pooping and like playing with their poop, instead of freaking out that they're playing with their poop, you just kind of have to maintain a calm demeanor and help them clean up so that they don't have a big reaction next time.
Yeah. And it can be so hard. Parenting is so demanding. And if that's a trigger for you, especially for whatever reason, it kind of makes you reckon with your own opinions and like your own relationship with that life skill and kind of your parents' feelings about it too. So it's, we don't think about that though. And we just think, oh, potty train and, you do 3 days later, everything's fine and we'll discuss it, never again. And so it's just so much more involved. And I think even the most well-intentioned parents it can become really overwhelming to do that, especially after like 3 years of changing diapers. And, it's a very sensory involved task for everyone.
Yes, for everyone.
So you also have a book about interoception, which we love that one too. And I think that's a great one for kind of our older kiddos who are struggling to listen to what's happening internally. So let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk more about interoception, that connection between potty training. And if you just want to give our listeners like a brief explanation in your words of interoception, that would be great.
Yeah. I describe it as interoception is our body's inside cues or inside signals telling us what we need to be safe and to feel good.
Love that. Yeah.
Simple and like to the point.
Did you learn about interoception in school in 2009?
We did. I don't think we went super in depth to it, but I remember it was like interoception, proprioception, stereognosis. And it was like, remember these words.
We had nothing in school about interoception. It was proprioception and vestibular, and that was it.
Yeah, we didn't have enough. And I feel like we talked about it more maybe when we were discussing things like stroke or spinal cord injury, when there was an absence of those things.
Not in peds.
But it was definitely like, continuing education and that kind of like reading that. And now there's so much research, I feel like, coming out about nervous system, and vagus nerve. And they're kind of, I heard a recent psychology thing about, it was a pop sci thing, but about interoception and how like that's the key. And I was like, we knew about this.
Yes, we did.
But it's definitely, it's getting more, I feel like it's getting more into the popular circle now of like kind of what it is. And so it's been exciting for me too, to like learn more about it as more research comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of your favorite activities to work on interoceptive processing with your clients?
Yeah, I'm always thinking of new stuff, and you guys have some great stuff. I love following your Instagram. But I think especially with toileting, if we talk specifically about that, most kids who've been struggling with toileting don't want to talk about it. So I usually start with everything else. So I love doing things like exploring warm and cold and like kind of starting with the, the least intense stuff, weather outside. So I love working on things like that. Recently, I've been playing with like hot and cold packs and kind of like closing your eyes and just feeling that, working on hunger and fullness cues, things like that. I love using visual scales for kids. So hunger and fullness scales, like, am I so hungry I could, eat everything, or am I so full? And same with kind of like, am I so hot? Am I so cold? Is it somewhere in between? Yeah, I love using like visuals and pictures in my practice. I also love doing deep diaphragmatic breathing. A lot of times the connection is a little like more spread out than those like hands-on tasks, but I do feel like helping kids feel safe in their body through activities like deep breathing, guided meditations, does have an impact on their ability to listen to their body. I love to get parents involved too and tell them to, I call it neutral narration. I think there's a couple of other ways people describe this, but just talk about yourself, like I'm sweating right now. That's my body telling me I'm so hot, or like my, belly is rumbling. That's how I know, just so to introduce vocabulary, modeling, script, but you're not telling your kid how they feel or asking them a million times. You're just kind of providing that, caring caregiver facilitation in a way. So those are I guess the most common ways I work on it.
Yeah, that's great.
I think what's tough about interoception is there's no like, do this, then this happens. It's not like vestibular input where you spin them 3 times and they're either dizzy or they're not dizzy. It's a little bit more hidden, which I think it makes our job unique and challenging and fascinating and exciting. But I think it's harder for parents to recognize, like, what do you mean they don't recognize that it's cold outside or it's hot outside, so they don't know how to dress appropriately? Or what do you mean they can't tell if they're hungry or not? Because it's a little bit more abstract. And bridging that connection, I think, can be difficult for caregivers to recognize that it's not coming natural. Kind of like what Jessica talked about earlier is like going poop. It should be a natural thing. So how do you bridge that connection and get parents on board of recognizing like this isn't coming natural for your child, so we need to work on it?
That I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I think there is a big divide. And it's also like you can see that vestibular stuff, right? Like you can see it as an outsider looking in, but like you can't ever really know what someone's feeling in their body, especially about stuff like this. So one thing I tell parents is try to just believe your kid. Like if they say, for example, sometimes I work with children who have poop accidents and they say that they don't feel it. And I say, always believe them if they didn't feel it, even if you think that it's impossible, and like from an outsider's view, it's like we can't understand it. I say always believe the child. So sometimes with the interoception stuff, if a kid says they're hot, I tried just to reinforce, oh, you're hot. Like, let's, like hot doesn't feel comfortable. Like, let's turn the AC on, or like, let's take a layer off. So I try to really work from that perspective. And sometimes it is just explaining to the parents, like from this moment forward, just believe them. Like just this week, just everything they say about this stuff. Like, what if we just try to take them at their word and assume that that's what they're feeling, and if it becomes a safety issue, we can work through it. But otherwise, let's just try. Sometimes with parents too, I'm just like, let's just see what happens if we try it this way, or we'll make it a game, kind of like that. So most of the times parents are pretty receptive to that. And, it can become such a problem sometimes that it's worth it just trying to try a different way and just trying to kind of believe that.
I
That
really
sense.
like that advice. Just, thinking back with clients or even my own child of like, they tell us something that they're feeling, and maybe we see the situation differently, or maybe we know that they're struggling with interoception, so their, interpretation of how they're feeling might not be quite accurate, but we're going to go ahead and validate them, give them the benefit of the doubt, which really reinforces their ability to have self-confidence, which so many of our kids have no self-confidence because of these challenges. So like that is one of those first steps of like building a connection with these clients, with your own child. Build that connection, help them, have some self-confidence, and then building those interoceptive skills will just maybe be a little bit easier, hopefully.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I feel like so much of it requires the adult slowing down and like really attuning. And I think that's the first step is like kind of just allowing them the space to let them know we trust them and guiding them, if it's like way too hot and they put a sweatshirt on, then guiding them through that of just like what, happens next. But it does require, yeah, like a big slowing down of us adults, and we're busy and we're tired and we're,
Well,
not
we
always in
feel
the
like,
place to do that.
and we oftentimes we feel like we know best, we
Yeah.
know what would work for this child, but maybe it's not the right time or something. So,
Totally. Yeah. And I think like, the anxiety of a parent, you want to take great care of your kid. And it's like, you don't want them to overheat or be cold or not go to the bathroom when you know that they have to. And it's hard to know, yeah, you're probably right. But like maybe we have to ride out this navigation a little bit,
yeah.
even if it's a messy at first.
No, I really like that advice of like just believe them for a while.
I'll share a little story that happened this weekend because that's fresh in my mind. We went to float the river where we live for the holiday weekend, and my son has never done that before. And I can tell he's a little on the sensitive side, and he was kind of ruminating on it. And I could just tell he was really thinking about like the logistics. And he finally, we're about to get on the water, and he goes, and he's 4, and he goes, "Mom, I'm feeling scared." And I just feel like in so many situations it would have been so easy to be like, "No, it's fine. Come on, let's go." But I just sat down, I got on his level, and I looked at him. I said, "Yeah, buddy, I was scared too the first time. Like, that's totally valid, you know? And I just explained to him what the process was going to look like, why we were wearing life jackets, even though the water wasn't deep at all. Like, because he was like, why do we need life jackets if the water's not very deep? So just like explaining that process to these kids can make it so much easier for them to comprehend and recognize from the start, and just validating their feelings and listening to them rather than telling them how to feel, right?
Yeah, totally. Or assuming that they're wrong, you know? And I think
Yeah.
when you can do that, then the moments where you have to like pull the parent card of like, no, we have to put sunblock on because it's a safety issue, it can become, you know, there's, I feel like more reciprocal respect there because,
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
they know that, you know, you're going to keep them safe, even if that means, you know, like that they have to feel like the sunblock or wear the UPF layer or, you know, whatever it is. Like we
Totally.
can't go to that area right now because it's not safe. So I
Yeah,
feel like
for
you
sure.
get a little more buy-in too.
Definitely.
Do you work with any clients who are non-speaking or use some sort of AAC device to communicate? And if so, how do you work on these skills with them? Because I feel like our approach is different oftentimes when we're working with a child who, you know, doesn't communicate verbally.
Yeah, I haven't worked with clients with AAC devices. I have worked with children with, you know, maybe a limited verbal or were nonverbal. And I use a lot of play and cause and effect and a lot of pictures and stories, comics, kind of using whatever maybe they're interested in to model toileting. It can be trickier with the interoception thing, but I do find that one of my first things that I would do is, well, after kind of like building a relationship, building trust, but then working towards modeling through play some of these things of hot, cold, you know, safety, things like that would be kind of the first thing I do. And I love drawing. So I love using like comics or making pictures together. That's a big and fun way, I think, to work there.
Yeah, I love that. So, can you share some of your like go-to sensory strategies, or maybe even not sensory strategies, when you're working on pelvic floor health with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, some of the biggest sensory strategies are, well, working first on interoception and kind of sometimes that can look a lot like play around, like we're talking about everything except toileting at first. And then, so it might look like, right, exploring warm and cold, playing dress up with dolls, things, things like that, doing deep breathing. And then I move on to maybe more what would be like sensory motor. So like working on deep diaphragmatic breathing, coordination, and then, you know, working on coordination of the pelvic floor muscles, which is a lot through, sometimes we can use sensory stuff like water balloons or sitting on different things. Like I love using a peanut ball. A lot of times too, when people come to me, there's usually some amount of core strengthening or, you know, bigger level coordination that we start working on. So using like reflex integration, which I know you guys know and think a lot about. So double checking that kind of stuff and working from a reflex perspective and kind of all those maybe more classic cross lateral movements and things like that. There's not always, but a lot of times I do find that there is a sensory, like an underlying sensory component that involves reflexes or bilateral coordination involved somewhere there.
Yeah.
So working on those like foundational skills can be so helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just got a little distracted because I just noticed my book is in your background.
Oh
On your
yeah. Oh my gosh, it is. And then I didn't even plan it. That's where it lives.
That just makes
Is
me
it
so.
is it the
It's the
giant or
jungle
the
crawl.
jungle
Yeah,
crawl?
I was just like, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
it is. And I use it so much in sessions because
Yay!
crawling is such a huge, even for older children, like I will use those crawls and I use your book as like a treatment. Like I'll like have your book on one end of my room and then it's like we're going to get something and bring it to the book. So
Oh, I love that.
I really use it as an interactive book.
Yay! Oh, that makes
It's
me so
great.
happy.
So
I was
and
just
so
listening to
many
you.
it was it's so funny because so many kids like you know sometimes I'll have a kid who like doesn't wanna, but I'll just like I have the book there. So they're like, what is that? And we'll look through the book and then we'll just start. That will be the place that we start to move and get comfortable together. So thank you.
Oh,
It
I'm
is,
so glad.
it's not just a book you read. It's a book
Nope. Yes,
it's
you
a book
do.
you use. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah. That's,
So
yep.
funny.
That's where it lives right there.
For me, I don't specialize in pelvic floor, but I can recognize clients who are struggling with it. What are some things that like I could incorporate into my treatment sessions with my clients to also work on their pelvic floor health?
Yeah, totally. And I think this is like me getting on my soapbox, but I feel like OTs are so perfect for working in pelvic health and toileting. I mean, like toileting is one of those like basic ADLs that we talk about in school. And even if you don't go like deep down the rabbit hole of pediatric pelvic floor, I feel like if you're a peds OT and you're thinking about it, like this is, right for you, this is good for you and like totally your treatment area. But I think some things you can certainly working on all the foundational stuff like reflex integration, core strength, coordination, praxis, things like that. And then certainly the sequence of toileting, just what is the sequence of toileting? Can you accurately describe the steps that are taken? Can you manage your clothing? Things like that are a great place to start even if you're not like specifically hitting the pelvic floor. And then, you know, body mechanics is another great place to address the pelvic floor. So just can we sit upright? Can we do a real diaphragmatic breath? Can we relax and contract all of the muscles of our body, not just our pelvic floor? Those are great places to kind of start. And then another, great investigative tool is to like talk to parents and really dig in and find out what's going on. Like, are they going to the bathroom? How often? So it can be a real, they say in peds, you treat the family. So this can be a really holistic way to involve everyone to kind of figure out what's going on. You can look at it from like a scheduling perspective and just kind of what are the roles? What are the routines? How are we addressing it? What's the value placed on it or not? So I feel like there's so much space for OTs who are such a great fit to kind of work on this holistic skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have a question. Have you ever used a like full body standing vibration plate to work on these skills?
No, but I've seen them all on my Instagram feed. I have not. I would love, I mean, do you guys use that? I would love to hear more.
Ooh,
Yeah.
love them.
Yes, I
Yeah.
use it all the time.
I just
Like for
wonder.
yourself too, or
Yeah, I use it in the
yeah.
clinic, and I know you have
I
one
have
at
one at home
home.
and in my clinic.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because I think it just like you hop on and besides all the lymphatic system benefits, you just get off and you're like, whoa, like I can feel everything, for better or for worse sometimes, but it's like, wow,
Yeah.
that's really moving. Like that's very eye-opening, and I think it just kind of helps to kind of move everything around and kind of shake
Yeah.
everything up. And I was just curious from, kind of a pelvic floor side of things, if that was a modality that is being used or could be used, or if it's
Hmm.
warranted. I'm just, I like the alternative things, so I'm just going to lay that out there.
I love that. My first thought was, I wonder if it helps with gut motility.
Yeah.
Because you said lymphatic and the movement. I don't know. That's such a good question. I'll
Yeah.
have to
We didn't
investigate
do any
that.
research on there
Mm-hmm.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd think it would, right? But that's a great question. I'm
TBD.
gonna I'm gonna think
We'll,
about
we'll,
that.
we'll do a deep dive on that.
Yeah, that's next time.
Perfect.
Okay, wrapping up here, do you have any go-to tools or resources,
Besides your books.
besides your books, which we will make sure are linked in the description of this video because they are must-reads for homes and clinics, schools as well. But are there any other go-to resources that you love?
There's a lot of resources. I mean, for therapists looking to get trained, there's Kira Smith. She has courses. She's great. And Kids Bowel and Bladder. They're great resources. And Dr. Stephen Hodges is a leader kind of in this field of more like ongoing constipation. So he's got a great podcast interview. Ooh, I forget the name of it, but I'll send you the link. Those are some good like things to get started, I think. And yeah, those are some good places, I think, for parents and professionals to kind of dive a little deeper.
Okay, I'm just thinking too for parents who are listening to this and they're like, yes, this is an issue. Where do we go from here? Do we get a referral? What's the next step, I guess, if they're like, help, we need pelvic floor therapy? Where do we go from here?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes, just Googling pediatric pelvic floor in my area is a good place to start. A lot of times, adult pediatric pelvic floor OTs and PTs will also be trained in pediatrics. They might just not advertise it on their website as much. So it's worth calling, I think, them, or they might be your next best person to find a pediatric provider. So that's a good place to start. A lot of pediatric pelvic floor PTs and OTs are seeing people virtually now. So even if they're not so close to you, you might be able to find someone in your state who can provide virtual care. So that's a good place to get started.
You need a referral?
It depends on the state. In Virginia, you do need a referral. I know you guys are in Idaho. I don't know if you're direct access.
You need a referral if you want insurance to pay for it.
Yeah, that's
If you don't want
usually the
insurance
case.
to pay for it, if you want to pay out of pocket, you don't need a referral.
Oh, so yeah, in Virginia, you need the referral no matter what, but
Even
it's
with
different in
private
every
pay.
state.
Ah,
Yeah, even if it's private pay.
interesting.
We are not direct access. Yeah. So you have to check for OT, not for PT. So check with your state. It's usually people have to, a good place to start too is your pediatrician, and just to start the conversation. If maybe you've talked about it a little bit on your child visits, but like, bring it up. I always tell parents to like start tracking, track kind of when they're having bowel movements, how hard they are, what's going on, because sometimes it's hard to describe what's going on to your pediatrician in the moment. But if you have like a log, you can look through it. Hopefully you have a pediatrician who will look over it with you. So that's like a great place to get started too.
Okay, that brings me up with another question really quick before we hop off.
Yeah.
So, what is a good reference on like how often should your child be having a bowel movement and what should it look like?
Yeah. So
You got to read her book.
Well,
It shows you.
I learned about this in the gut course that I took, but for our
okay.
listeners, let's give our listeners an idea
Yeah.
really quick.
So like the, APA says like, all the GI, it's like it's between every day to every 3 days, a bowel movement is considered normal. And, but, clinically, personally, I don't know if I agree with that. Like, I feel like 3 days for most kids is probably too much, but like, clinically at your doctor's office, every 3 days will be considered normal. However, you can poop every single day and still be constipated. You can poop a good size poop every single day and still be constipated. So that doesn't necessarily mean, that your gut health is, on target necessarily. And it should look like somewhere between a smooth hot dog and soft serve ice cream is what you want. I think for kids, the biggest thing to consider too is, if you're really struggling to go, if it's little pellets all day long, they're pooping several times a day, it should be easy to poop. It shouldn't be a strain. It should come out smooth and easy. Those are some things maybe to look for more. And sometimes I hear parents say like it's impossible that they're constipated every time they poop. It's like huge, but that's actually can be one of the signals that there's constipation if a lot is coming out. So sorry, not to get too much graphic, but
Normalize
yeah.
it.
No, I feel like I could talk about this all day, especially after taking this gut microbiome course that I took. And, several times a day you poop to detox, right? Like that's the whole point of a bowel movement is detoxing. And so if you're not pooping every day, you're not detoxing. And I could go on and on and on about it, but I just think, wow, 3 days of not pooping is considered normal. That's crazy.
It would be so uncomfortable.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And, the colon can just hold so much. Some kids go weeks without pooping. So it's so stretchy, that colon can just hold so much.
Yeah.
Really quick too, your thoughts on like suppositories for a kiddo who is constipated or holding.
Yeah, there's a lot of great research for, like, Dr. Hodges is a real supporter of suppositories and enemas too, like a bottom-up approach. So,
I know, I had to laugh. I tried
know
not to
it is.
giggle, but I had to.
Well, they talk in the gut stuff about like top down and bottom up, but they mean like top down, like oral, and bottom up, like an enema. So it's funny, yeah, because it's
Very accurate.
yeah. So I think if your doctor's on board and your kid is on board and you can make it like smooth, then it can be super helpful. I mean, there's a lot of, constipation management is a big issue in terms of kind of like what do you do? And there's actually this great constipation management plan from a doctor in Maryland. I'll send you a link for that too, because I feel like every parent should have that. And it's kind of just like red, yellow, green. What do you do? And it's like great too if your kiddo's having trouble to like bring this to your doctor and be like, fill this out with me. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, and a lot of it just depends on kind of what your kid can tolerate from a medical perspective and from like a sensory or emotional perspective too.
Yeah, Miralax every day from the time they're 1 year old and on, right?
Is the
Miralax.
Every
day.
Miralax can help if your doctor provides it
temporarily. That's kind of where I'm at with Miralax, is like some kids need that help temporarily to have a positive experience in the bathroom, but then let's get them off.
Yeah, it can. The tricky part with Miralax is you might need to be on, like, if you reach a certain point and your doctor's on board. I just want to put that out there because, like, I'm not saying take Miralax or don't take Miralax. I'm saying go talk to your doctor. But, you might need to be on it a little longer than you want to be or expect to be until maybe your colon shrinks back and your interoception skills kind of come back online and are working really well. So that's the other part too. But there's a lot more stuff I'm seeing on the market lately too, geared towards kids, like in terms of like fiber and probiotics and magnesium. So it's interesting. I feel like we're going to see more of that coming out too.
For sure. Supplements.
Which it's time.
Yeah.
We need some other options.
I know. Yeah. Roughage. Yeah.
Boy.
Well, Sarah, this has been so great and informative and just such a great conversation. We thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I can talk to you guys for another hour. I want to hear all about this microbiome class that you just took. So thanks so much for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
See you later.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
If you want more information on anything mentioned in the show, head over to harkla.co/podcast to get the show notes.
If you have any follow-up questions, the best place to ask those is in the comments on the show notes, or message us on our Instagram account, which is at Harkla_family or at All Things Sensory Podcast. If you just search Harkla, you'll find us there.
Like we mentioned before, our podcast listeners get 10% off their first order at Harkla. Whether it's for one of our digital courses or one of our sensory swings, the discount code SENSORY will get you 10% off. That's SENSORY.
Head to harkla.co/sensory to use that discount code right now.
We are so excited to work together to help create confident kids all over the world. While we make every effort to share correct information, we're still learning.
We will double check all of our facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art.
One doctor or therapist may have a different way of doing things from another.
We are simply presenting our views and opinions on how to address common sensory challenges, health-related difficulties, and what we have found to be beneficial that will be as evidence-based as possible.
By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or your child.
Consult your child's pediatrician or therapist for any medical issues that he or she may be having.
This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.